we were able to come up with the compromises that prevented a nuclear war. Today, we aren't talking to the Russians. He makes that statement. It is a game changer. The Russians will sit up and listen, and they'll be in a better position to make compromises that Trump may want them to make.
Friends, I welcome you. Today we have a very hot material for analysis, the last interview with Scot Ritter, which is already being analyzed for quotes by all the world's media. Scot Ritter made a shocking admission. The Russians cannot be defeated. The new Hazel rocket changes the rules of the game. If you don't respect the Russians, your capital may be on fire in a matter of seconds. We will discuss all this right now, dear viewers. We will not delay and we will begin. The co-host asks Scot a question. Welcome, my dear friend. What is the military and geopolitical significance of the missile that Russia launched at Ukraine last week? The beginning of Scot Ritter's speech, quote, "We are talking about a powerful missile system that surpasses everything in the West in its characteristics. It is, in fact, the most powerful non-nuclear weapon on the planet, with a destructive power that cannot be fully appreciated." Theodore Posta from the Institute of Technology, who is currently analyzing this rocket, claims that the technology and physics involved in its creation surpass anything we could imagine. We didn't think about it and didn't know how to do it. Russia has struck with a unique weapon that we cannot shoot down or intercept. And when it hits a target, it destroys it. Those who claim that this is just an experimental rocket should be worried. I'm here to tell you that maybe this rocket is still under development, but its components already exist. Many of them are mass-produced, and most of them have already been released, at least in a pilot version. Russia has the opportunity to assemble dozens of such missiles at once. If they launch them into mass production, they will be able to produce about 100 such missiles per year. At the moment, Russia probably has from 12 to 25 such missiles. This means that there are 12 to 25 places in Europe that may cease to exist if Russia decides to launch them. Was the appearance of this rocket a surprise? The presenter asks himself. Scot Ritter responds, "Until the rocket was launched the other day, no, it wasn't. The US intelligence services are actually very good. The problem is not with information collectors or junior analysts, but with middle managers and senior intelligence management. They politicize Russia's strength, because recognizing Russia's strength will automatically expose the policy we are pursuing towards Russia and Ukraine and show that it is doomed to failure. That's why our politicians say, we must succeed, and insist on receiving information that confirms that we can succeed, even if this information is false. Even if it is false. When I talk about false information, I mean facts that are planted, do not lie outright. For example, the president is told that the Russians are preparing to launch an experimental missile system that we have never seen before, and we believe that this is the only such system. It launches, and the president says, "Damn, it was powerful, it was very powerful. But it was just one rocket, there's nothing else, they don't have a whole bunch of these missiles. So they're bluffing, you know? This is false information." But let's look at another example. Do you remember the headlines that appeared after the rocket was launched? The Pentagon and the White House and NATO were paralyzed with fear because until the last moment, until the missile hit the target, they did not know whether it was nuclear or not. It's just an outright lie. We knew from the very beginning that these were not nuclear weapons, but the public is not told that 36 hours before the launch of the rocket, the Russians took it to the launch pad at the Kapustin Yar test site. This is one of the most closely guarded places because missile tests are conducted there. All our intelligence was directed at Kapustin Yar. We already knew what was going on there and reported it. We were targeting certain nuclear protocols that are involved when it comes to nuclear weapons, and we knew that. I'm just telling you that there is an entire industry that collects such data. There are things you're looking for, and they either happen or they don't. When the Russians were preparing this rocket for launch, none of these protocols worked. Therefore, all intelligence analysts have concluded that this is a conventional warhead. When it came time to launch, the Russians gave 30 minutes notice that they were going to launch. They did it because it is provided by the law. But we already knew what they were going to launch. We've been tracking this almost in real time. All this time, the rocket was launched, and without going into details, let's say that we have the opportunity to collect all possible information about this rocket, including high-resolution photos, radar images, and so on. We're tracking her, filming her. We all know. We know what this missile is capable of and what it is not capable of. We know all about her. But the truth is inconvenient because the White House and NATO don't want to hear it. Therefore, this information is being hidden. But the reality is that we know everything about this missile because the Russians made sure that we could do it. And now the brightest part of the performance begins. Friends, listen carefully. Scot Ritter continues, because it is important for Russia that we understand what is happening. They have just deployed a system that we will never be able to bring down. This system will hit its target, and there's nothing we can do about it. No facility in Europe is protected from this missile. It can hit targets that previously could only be destroyed with nuclear weapons. Did we know before the launch how fast and destructive it is? The presenter asks. I would say that this rocket uses some unique technologies. For example, the first stage of this missile seems to be related to an intercontinental ballistic missile, which is already being developed in Russia and was tested several times in 2023 and 2024. Ukrainians gave it the name Ritter. That means they know what kind of rocket it is. As I said, we were aware of her tests, knew her characteristics, watched her, and knew how fast she could fly. We knew exactly what was going to happen. As for the warhead, I do not know if it has been tested in combat conditions. However, we know that the mechanism for dropping warheads is unique. Usually a missile has several independent warheads. The missile launches, then splits, turns around, and releases warheads. The peculiarity of this missile is that instead of warheads, it has 6 miniature missiles that fire at ultra, high speed, and then release ammunition, 6 unique systems made of a non-explosive exotic alloy. This material is heated to a very high temperature, and the temperature itself becomes a weapon. Upon impact, a funnel is created that penetrates deeply, burns everything around. It's just a unique weapon, and we knew about its existence because the Russians claimed it in their designs. The report says that the rocket uses this principle. We know a lot about this missile because we follow the tests of Russian missiles. The exact characteristics of the warhead are unknown to me, but if you look at a walnut tree and see how its fruits hang down, you can compare it with what these munitions look like. Hence the name nut, because it is an exact copy of what a walnut tree looks like. We knew a lot about this rocket in advance. We know a lot about Russians. I think, from a political point of view, we did not expect them to use it. This is the first time this has happened. This is surprising because this is the first time a strategic system has been used in combat. This is a psychological barrier that has now been passed. No one wanted this, but now Russia has done it and is ready to do it again. I don't think the West has realized exactly what happened, because it literally changes the rules of the game. If we do not respect this, we will receive more and more serious blows. Do you have any doubt, Scot, that this was done in response to President Biden and Prime Minister Starmer's permission to use air-to-ground and Storm Shadow missiles to strike Russian territory? Asks the co-host. Scot Ritter's response. We know that this missile was developed in response to the U.S. decision to deploy intermediate-range nuclear missiles in Germany. The Dark Eagle Brigade has already been created. Ford systems have been deployed, although the rocket is not ready yet. Denmark has also deployed a container training system capable of launching medium-range missiles. Russia has stated that if we deploy these systems, it will respond. In response to these threats, in July of this year, Putin said that it was necessary to act quickly, and then the development of a new missile was launched. This missile is designed to destroy the Dark Eagle and container systems, as well as to launch a preemptive strike against these facilities before they can launch missiles at the United States. However, as you know, these weapons have not yet been deployed, but we have started using Storm Shadow missiles to attack Russian territory. We have weapons for retaliatory strikes, and the Russians have warned us that if we continue in this spirit, they will use weapons that have never been used before and that have destructive power beyond anything we could have expected. Everyone was wondering what kind of weapon we were talking about. These are not thermobaric or nuclear weapons, but more specific ones, and it is obvious that their creation was the result of our actions, as well as the fact that we allowed a well-known country to act in this way. Today, the French newspaper reported that President Macron and Prime Minister Starmer are discussing sending troops. At the same time, Admiral Rob Bauer, chairman of the NATO Military Committee, said that NATO is discussing the possibility of preventive targeted strikes on Russian territory. This is crazy. Starmer and Macron are considering deploying troops, referring to Trump's scenario, which suggests that if he becomes president, he will order an end to aid, and Britain and France will intervene and deploy troops. However, this is more of a political move than a real threat, because France is not ready to deploy troops, and the UK does not have the forces to do so. However, talking about a NATO preemptive strike is much more dangerous. Why is it dangerous? Because according to the Russian nuclear doctrine, recently published by Vladimir Putin, one of the conditions for the use of nuclear weapons is a strike on Russian strategic facilities, command posts, logistics, and communications using precision conventional weapons. If NATO is going to launch such a strike, it could lead to a nuclear response. When NATO says it will act preemptively, that is, it will not wait for the Russians to strike, but will strike first, it means that Russia will be forced to perceive every action as a potential start of such a preemptive strike. Thus, when a well-known country launches missiles like the Kars or Storm Shadow, the Russians may wonder if this is not the first step towards a preemptive NATO strike. If so, they will not wait for everything to unfold, but will immediately strike back, which may include nuclear weapons. It will be catastrophically destructive, and if the situation comes to the use of nuclear weapons, it will not be just a show of force, but a decisive blow that destroys strategic targets, including capitals, large military bases, and industrial facilities. This will lead to destruction, which could be the end of the world. The Russians, it seems to me, are ready, and if the situation worsens, then one of the first targets for a Russian strike will be the missile defense system that the United States has deployed in Poland. They have already stated that this is on their list of targets, and the new Orshnik missile is specially designed to destroy this system. She won't last 2 seconds. I think Russia will strike at such targets, including airfields in Romania, from where troops will operate, as well as ports in Romania and warehouses with American military equipment in Poland. This is reality, and when I say strike, I mean that the targets will be destroyed, nothing will remain, the end of the main part. Next, Scot Ritter shared what we can expect in the near future, and makes a shocking statement. Listen, friends. As for Donald Trump, in my opinion, he is only playing with the American people by making statements about withdrawing from Ukraine and preventing a nuclear conflict, but in practice his approach is not much different from Biden's policy. It is important to note that his advisors, such as Sebastian Gorka, openly support a tough position, even if it could lead to an escalation of the conflict in Ukraine. Trump is likely to continue to pursue policies that his team approves of, and there is no talk of covert sabotage here. Are you saying that Trump has used Ukraine from the very beginning as an instrument of pressure on Putin, and that his policy is similar to Joe Biden's? Asks the co-host. Scot Ritter's response. I don't want to believe it, but the facts tell a different story. It is impossible to choose a person for the post of National Security Advisor and then let him say that there is no difference between the actions of Jake Sullivan, Anthony Blinken, and what is planned to be done under Trump. Sebastian Gorka said that we will redouble our efforts and supply more weapons, and now we can only guess what Marco Rubio will say, because he adheres to the same harsh rhetoric. Trump has surrounded himself with people who want conflict with Russia. The only one who does not support the war is Tulsi Gabbard, but she is silent. Now the man who claims to speak on behalf of Trump is calling Putin a crook. Vladimir Putin will not talk to Trump if he talks to him in that tone. This is exactly what Trump needs. Donald, if you're listening to me, get rid of these people and invite a real expert on Russia. I'm ready to take this job. I don't need to pay anything, I don't want to work in your administration, but you need to listen to me for 24 hours and understand what is really happening in Russia, because everything you do is counterproductive. Now the man who claims to speak on behalf of Trump is calling Putin a crook. Vladimir Putin will not talk to Trump if he talks to him in Thane. This is exactly what Trump needs. Donald, if you're listening to me, get rid of these people and invite a real expert on Russia. I'm ready to take this job. I don't need to pay anything, I don't want to work in your administration, but you need to listen to me for 24 hours and understand what is really happening in Russia, because everything you do is counterproductive. Putin won't talk to you if you talk to him that way. You already know, Donald, because you met with Putin in Helsinki, and then he came out like a winner and you like a beaten puppy. He's not the type to be intimidated. If you want peaceful coexistence with Russia, remember that Russia has already won many conflicts, and there is nothing Trump can do about it. Sebastian Gorka does not understand what he is talking about. He does not know about the American defense industry, about the pace of weapons production. He doesn't know how much stock we have. We need weapons to fight China if war breaks out. If we give all the weapons TF you want peacefustance with Russia, remember that Russia has already won many conflicts, and there is nothing Trump can do about it. Sebastian Gorka does not understand what he is talking about. He does not know about the American defense industry, about the pace of weapons production. He doesn't know how much stock we have. We need weapons to fight China if war breaks out. If we give all the weapons to a famous country, we will have nothing left to defend ourselves against China. Doesn't Trump know all this? Or was he deceiving the people by planning to start a war? The presenter asks himself. Scot Ritter responds, both. Trump knows nothing about Russia. He has surrounded himself with people who don't know anything about Russia, and he trusts these people. Putin is not a cruel dictator, as his opponents write it. Why doesn't Trump meet with someone who understands what's going on in Russia and who can tell him the truth? Trump should start by stating that as soon as he takes office, he will immediately end the policy of Trump should start by stating that as soon as he takes office, he will immediately end the policy of strategic defeat of Russia. We do not seek the strategic defeat of Russia. Our goal is peaceful coexistence. If Trump makes such a statement, it could change the rules of the game, and the Russians will be ready to compromise. But if he continues to listen to people like Sebastian Gorka, Russia will never talk to him. If Trump doesn't start talking to the Russians, we will all be in danger because this is the most dangerous situation we have ever faced. The only way to MP doesn't start talking the Russians, we will all be in danger because this is the most dangerous situation we have ever faced. The only way to avoid a nuclear war is through negotiations, as was the case during the Caribbean crisis. Now, unlike in those days, we do not have a dialogue with the Russians, and this is deadly dangerous. Trump must understand that peaceful coexistence with Russia is possible only with respect. We can't win this situation without talking to them. The end of Scot Ritter's performance. And now I want to express my opinion, friends. To be honest, I'm shocked by what I heard from Scot. To be honest, I'm shocked by what I heard from Scot Ritter. His analysis of the situation, depth of understanding, and boldness of statements are amazing. Scot accurately and unvarnished laid everything apart. From the incompetence of Trump's entourage to the complete failure of U.S. diplomacy towards Russia. It is incredible that a person with such experience and knowledge is ready to offer his help for free, just for the chance to prevent a catastrophe. What's going on anyway? Why aren't people like Ritter at the center of decision-making? His words are not just criticism, they are a call to action, a call to common sense. Scot Ritter is a true professional, and his initiative deserves great respect. His willingness to advise Trump on a pro bono basis in order to establish relations with Russia shows an incredible sense of responsibility and dedication to the cause of peace. There should be more people like Ritter in international politics. He is not afraid to tell the truth and call a spade, even if it is inconvenient or unprofitable. This is an act worthy of applause, and I thank him for it. Thank you, Scot, for your initiative and the truth. God bless you. But this situation brings to the fore a frightening fact. What are Trump and his team doing if they don't hear people like Ritter? Why are those who are dragging the country towards disaster sitting next to the president in an administration that claims to return greatness to America? If Trump wants to be a leader who will prevent war, he must surround himself with professionals. Otherwise, his rhetoric is an empty phrase. Scot Ritter gave him a chance to hear the truth. Now, the only question is whether Trump himself will hear it. The issue turned out to be heavy and big. I want to thank you for your attention, friends. Also, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and write your opinion. I wish you good health. See you soon.